This program is brought to you in association with First National Bank of Botswana.
FNB, how can we help you?
Before the ever-evolving raging COVID-19 pandemic, economic growth discussions did not typically include health matters at length because the debate on policy often focused on controlling healthcare costs and not necessarily ensuring a deliberate focus on the health of citizens. This way of thinking has, however, proven myopic as it misses the bigger picture. According to a publication on prioritizing health, a prescription for prosperity, health and the economy are inseparably linked, and there's evidence which, whilst not always apparent or obvious, shows that investing in health and health systems is clearly beneficial for achieving economic objectives. You would remember that at the outset of the pandemic, experts believed that the only way out of this unending abyss was to have vaccines. Following the devastating knock to economic activity, many sectors were hard hit, but none as terribly as the tourism and hospitality sector, when all travel was indefinitely halted.
99% of tourism businesses have been negatively affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
So with events, wedding banquets and holiday reservations being cancelled on the back of the coronavirus situation.
The World Travel and Tourism Council warns the pandemic could cost up to 50 million jobs worldwide.
Well, the vaccines were manufactured and distributed across many parts of the world, including here in Botswana.
Tutuye iling mokento wan tharu amrelang mobikin tse pedi re tabora amrela tse dingwe go tswa kwa mahatsheng a harologanyeng.
While the vaccination drive in the country is evidencing to be on the right track, those in the remotest parts of the country still struggle with access to this very extraordinarily essential service. This is when collaborative and concerted efforts between various stakeholders quickly became the only way to fight this monster. Recognizing this need, the Airborne Lifeline Foundation, mandated by the Ministry of Health, took it upon themselves to bridge the gap between flesh and needle.
When we originally approached the Ministry of Health offering our assistance and services to, facilitate with getting vaccinations out and offering air support, the first protocol they asked us to start with was the Ngami DHMT, which oversees pretty much all the lodges within the Ngami area and parts of the Okavango. I did engage with them. They pointed out that some of the challenges that they had was getting the vaccines out to the lodges with the staff that were out there. Airborne Lifeline, together with the Hotel and Tourism Association of Botswana, came together and we sort of split up different flights and different lodges that we would do. And Airborne Lifeline eventually managed to complete 24 lodges and their support units and administered more than 1,000 vaccines, and that was over a period of 5 days of flying.
It is through this foundation that more than 1,000 staff in more than 20 lodges in the Okavango Delta and hundreds more people in inaccessible areas were vaccinated. Owing to this success, however, who are Airborne Lifeline Foundation? Founder and president of the charity, Jonathan Miller, is on the program.
During the HIV/AIDS pandemic, I do all sorts of aviation work. It was obvious that rural areas were not getting covered in a medical sense the same way people were in Gaborone or Francistown or other places. And so Joy Pamafi then was the health minister, and Joy is now one of my mentors, was one of my great friends. And Joe Huggins was the U.S. ambassador. He's now on my board at Airborne. And we started talking about the fact that you weren't getting coverage out in rural areas during the HIV/AIDS days. These were early days yet. And I said, well, let's sort of figure out if we can come up with something from getting scarce resources. So we came up with Airborne Lifeline Foundation, formed a MOU with the Ministry of Health, and the idea, according to Joy, was to be holistic, not just HIV/AIDS. So to fly medical personnel, preventative care medical personnel, to remote areas. And the key was, and we were usually mostly medical people from Gaborone at the time, so that that person would go to the same location on the same day of the month, etc. But we also knew that their time was scarce, so they would leave like Gaborone early in the morning, have a full day of treatment, and be home with their family in the evening.
Our conversation with Jonathan took us more than 1,000 kilometers up north to Maun to meet with the passionate and determined head of operations at the organization, Tammy McAllister. On a late Tuesday afternoon, Tammy and the First Issues team took to the skies to land in the Delta at one of and beyond's lodges called Qaranna. This is one of the places where staff benefited from the efforts of the Airborne Lifeline.
I know for a fact from having spoken to a lot of the operators that they were already experiencing, I'm going to use the word pressure from the tourism sector outside, travel agents and things abroad that were saying, and asking the question, are your lodges, are your staff vaccinated? Because, that was going to play a big role in whether the booking was going to be processed or not.
While we acknowledge that the situation prior to the vaccines was dire, one staff member, KD Gabokolelo, says the full extent of the aftermath of the pandemic on the tourism sector can only be clearly articulated by those who experienced it firsthand.
Prior to the advent of the vaccines, during the middle time of COVID, a lot of companies were not operating. Lots of staff members actually lost their jobs. Even some were even on unpaid leave at home because basically there was no business.
As they are now fully vaccinated, the staff can now offer service confidently without fear.
As soon as the vaccines came into the spotlight and limelight, there was a time whereby it was all about making them accessible. And once that happened, when now they became accessible and bringing them here, and due to the fact that the staff members had heard about the positives that vaccines could bring, so everyone was really ready. So since that came in, I think all the staff members received them with both hands. And that on its own now has sort of like increased, the confidence of the workers, knowing that they are safe. But also it's something that from a marketing perspective, most of the travel agents are inquiring about the percentage of vaccinations of staff members in here. So this will, in the end, help to boost our tourism operations within the Okavango Delta.
Our next stop the following morning was a landing in one small remote village in the Ngami land called Chukumuchu.
This morning, we're heading out to the last two villages, the Dimba and Ndivitama. Got the crew on board, and we're heading off to Chukumuchu first to collect the vaccines and our nurse who will be administrating them. So, let's get going.
It is here that we met a local nurse at the area's only clinic within quite a lengthy radius. This nurse, Muluki Tata, would be guiding us to our first vaccination site, with his vaccines, cooler box and other necessities in hand. Muluki explains that while it would have taken them a week to cover the various areas with the mobile clinic drive, with Airborne Lifeline's hard work, it's all in a day's work.
The partnership did great to us. And we are happy, very, very happy. I can't think. But for now, as compared to Makakoloi, let's about na linti how. But for now, it was that simple. Wa yemela wa yema wa kenta. So well, I'm also finding, and it was very comforting. Then we have managed to live never to agree mostly at Makakoloi. What's happening there? The helicopter no two seats, but the fact that I mean, this is a helicopter. Moving team. We tell her the fact that to vaccination site. aba like into the bar to still ono bar to still at that lo capture a very good number.
While we have been hearing from the beneficiaries of Tammy and her team's work, how extensive has this operation been?
On our first mission out here, we managed to do Kabacha, Namazana, we did Kadum, Kari, and then we went out to Ghani and we did another 4. So we did a total of about 9 or 10 sites, the mobile sites. So this is the routes that the mobile ambulances and everything will go out, the mobile stops. And with the flights out there, because of the current weather, the roads, the condition of the roads, it's really quite challenging to get out there sometimes. And that's why they've actually called us in to come and help try and fly the vaccines out in that direction.
After a short rundown of where we were going and what to expect, we marched back to the helicopter where the winds would be carrying us to an even more remote village called Vindimba. Arriving here, we were met by no more than 5 homesteads and mini corral. There was very limited cell phone reception to none at all. It was evident that the people here kept cattle for a living and would only make contact with the main village only when absolutely necessary. The vaccination got underway with every protocol observed.
So these are the vaccination cards that are issued to each person that receives the vaccination. Flying in here is also really, really tricky. Trying to find a proper landing zone, which is safe enough for us to be able to, land and get airborne and stuff like that. In terms of actually getting the people out here, the DHMTs are actually pretty well organized. I've been very impressed by it. I've been very impressed by the communication, if we want to call it the bush telegraph. They've heard that the helicopter was coming in for vaccinations on Tuesday or on Wednesday, and everyone from the villages generally poured in. And as we sit here, you'll see they've now heard us land. People would just start to walk in from all sorts of directions. What's very exciting today is that we're actually facilitating the DHMT with additional administration of vitamin A and a deworming program that they have for all the small children. So today's a double whammy, which is quite nice. It's not just about vaccines today.
After a successful stop, we were off to Ndivitama. This small settlement, besides the slightly larger population, was no different from the last.
The outreach areas that we're busy focusing on, while our numbers aren't necessarily high, anywhere between 10 and 50 within a village, we're only focused on Okavango DHMT at this particular point, but the ministry has requested for us to extend our vaccination assistance with air transportation out to the Hansi district, to the Kalahari district and the central districts, Kuneng side. So I don't know how many people are out there, but people must be penalized for good medical health care just because of their physical address. It's really great to be part of a program that's getting everything out to the people that need it.
True to Tammy's previous statement, as we were about to board our transport back to base, a few more people came out of the woodworks to get their jabs, this being one of the challenges that the team has to face. Having ridden their horses all day from the Namibian border fence, they could not be left without receiving the vaccine. Another 30-odd minutes were spent waiting for another few who were reported to still be on the way. After a long day's work, we flew back to Chukumuchu, coming full circle on our journey. Tammy says she's happy with the amount of progress they have made thus far, especially in their efforts to help the tourism sector open up. This is quite a taxing exercise in all respects. What keeps Tammy going in spite of all these challenges?
I love a challenge. My motto is challenge accepted. So Botswana's been home for 22 years. My boys have grown up here. I feel these are my people, and I love the fact that I have the opportunity to make a difference, even if it's in one person's life. Running Airborne Lifeline for 7 years previously was an incredible honor, and just it was amazing to sometimes fly out to some of the destinations and be there with the mother who had brought her 6-week-old baby, to see the pediatrician, and to help her and to hold the baby, you know, and to see the difference that we're making in these people's lives. And here again, to go out to some of the villages and the mobile sites where I think some of the kids, I'm probably the first white woman that they've seen, you know, and it's just, I don't know, it just really is so fulfilling.
The deeds demonstrated by Airborne Lifeline Foundation continue to clearly highlight what collaborative action can achieve for the good of the collective.
Rona re kgakala le ditamelo ka kwano re mo sekgweng di-TV radio mme yaanong re itumela go bona difofane ke tse ka kwane go raya gore ke thuso e atlegile thata mo Botswana.
Ka botlalo re ka leboga Airborne Lifeline le Ministry of Health go bo ba botsere kgato ya go re tlisetsa ditlamelo. We really appreciate for that.
Nakamu nakimberi raisa ku bachatero obando kuzango kuyamba kwe kumuna ondivitama mochirongo cha mbangorote akawe fukwa okuyambera mbakwe kuchimuna horomende kutora ondera kuyeta mehindi ore kibitimelo tat.
To end this segment, Jonathan says people should not be penalized for the quality of their healthcare based off of where they live.
I'm passionate about the fact that you should not be penalized for the quality of your health care from where you live. So people in the rural areas should be entitled to at least a modicum of the same health care that they get in the urban areas. And our little niche is to go to the last mile.